Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a special Monster of the Wilds video for Title Update 4. It's time to look at Gogmazios and the runs, comparing the weapons and how they're doing compared to one another. But this immediately gets complicated. Compared to many of the monsters I've covered for these many lists and ranking videos I've done since the launch of the game, Gog is a pretty weird one because a lot of people are using support hunters, or some people are using solo but they've got their palico, or in fact some of them are bringing their palico in halfway through. Very few are actually uploading true solo runs, but some of those exist. And right now in the early days of GOG, sometimes the only run that exists for the weapon of a relevant time for us to look at is a solo run. But then that makes the weapon look worse than it really is, or would be if this very same player had done a run with support hunters, because they do a lot of damage. And weirdly, right now anyway, it doesn't seem like GOG scales in multiplayer or like per the number of player or anything. So what I'll do is look at the most impressive run or fastest times even with support hunters and rank it accordingly as best I've been able to. But I will be highlighting that, hey, this is a solo run, this is the time they achieved, and this is what I speculate would be possible if they did support hunters. So yes, the only requirements for these runs today, as usual, is we don't look at heroics runs, but otherwise pretty much anything goes as long as they're just using the one weapon for the whole run. And at the end, I'm also going to do a quick rundown of the notable solo runs and their times compared to one another, which will give us a pretty different list. So with that context importantly explained, let's begin. We kick the video off then with Switch Axe with a 22 minute and 58 second solo, which will bring in Palico at a certain point. This is what I'm talking about. We have a solo run where the time is nowhere near as good as maybe it could be if they ran support hunters. It'd be a lot faster. So we definitely need to see a proper run with support hunters to actually see where this stands. But considering this is still a very respectable 23 minute solo run, I think 16 minutes or less with support hunters is very viable and reasonable for Switch Axe. Anyway, a couple things that I want to highlight in regards to the GOG speedrunning concept that we'll see throughout this run is the fact that the players kind of open up at the head, get the weapon charged up, counter the roar, get the first slam, punish a wing arm, and then quickly drag him over in a pretty predictable way. As we're seeing, the first geyser, which is a pop of 2000 fire damage, and then a second pop of that, then you got the boulder drop, and then just standing around at the second geyser for another double pop, because sometimes GOG comes over, sometimes he just stands there. By the time we see all three pop though, it's a lot of damage, and now we can get into the real fight, where any attack that's going to come flying in is going to be an easy sword counter on, the drop of the hat. Obviously they're focusing hard on the wing arms and using a fire weapon for phase 1. But I see a lot of people swap to their dragon weapon either at the start of phase 2 or towards the end of it. Especially if you've got a weapon that requires a bit of amping, like Switch Axe, or say Charge Blade building up the vials. It's a really good idea to use the end of phase 2 to actually charge it up, so it's ready to go at the start of phase 3. With the changes to Switch Axe though, we see the first real example of it here, as we parry the roar, then cancel the double swing to get straight into the full release animation because the wing arm's right there. This brings them into another opportunity to immediately do a full release. This is something I've been seeing a lot in the Switch Axe community, is the new combos that are possible better DPS and something you should be doing. Absolutely, but the truth is full release still smashes like a brick wall, and it's what you want to do if your window is as long as the duration of one full release. And if your window is the duration of 2 full releases, you shouldn't be doing the burst spiral attack to recover your switch gauge. You should just be dumping everything you have into 2 full releases. It's still going to be a ton of damage in the shortest time. Moving on then, we have Longsword with a true solo run, so no palico at any point, 20 minutes and 55 seconds. This is still insanely impressive because yes, they don't even have a palico to help, which most of the soloers will have at some point. And so Longsword's true potential, if combined with support hunters, would probably be in the higher placements. Anyway, I want to pay attention and look at the start of the run just to see what you see. We get a very quick sheath to straight to the first wing arm, then it's a full charge to get the next level up, already at yellow gauge. By this time they're ready for whatever attack comes out to go to red gauge. This sucks, but it's a perfect example of how you can use the iframes as the special sheath during the channel of that oil breath to then just go into a second one and immediately do that. In fact, you can land both attacks into that channel and successfully land them for the level ups. So it's an easy free double level up if the first one's close enough to start with. Anyways, we didn't cover it in the switch axe thing. I will mention that there's a hyper focus from longsword on, well, every weapon really, on the wing arms where possible, but longsword's one of those weapons that can go toe to toe with Gog, especially in phase 1, countering every single attack pretty easily, honestly, as well. I've really enjoyed playing this weapon against Gog. So you end up hitting the head a lot, maybe more than some other weapons, which is great for the weapon. But yeah, definitely check this run out if you're interested in learning longsword against Gog. It's been great for learning for me. And hopefully in the future we see a very good run for longsword with support hunters, just to see what the potential is and get a better comparison. Moving on then, we have Insect Glaive with a 19-minute and 40-second clear in solo, although Palico does come in at one point. In phase 1 we see an initial opening very quick on the wing arm and very quick build of the essence. The main thing for Insect Glaive that I see is this right here, where we go into the descending slash and the essence dump. Can the weapon successfully move up through a hitbox that is optimal for the full tick of that big attack? If the answer is yes, generally Insect Glaive does really well in these rankings, and yet it's towards the lower end in this because we're seeing a solo run. If we saw support hunter use, I think we would see a very different time. In fact, with Insect Glaive, there is a pretty high-end support hunter run that's out there, which is 17 minutes and 32 seconds, but I feel like the potential is higher than that, so we're looking at the solo run today. But one trick I want to show is this specific moment where they're charging up the descending, they get the first attack out, pause, then go into the full actual essence dump, going up into the head. The timing on that specific, the turning channel is so clever, such a cool trick to do. So it does show again that the hitbox is high enough for the head as well as the wing arms, so it is a good target for Insect Glaive with that context. We see it there, there's the standing channel, that's a bit of an easier one, not so clever timing needed at all. Anyway, we're seeing a repeat thing here we mentioned with the switch axe, basically the same curving path to each geyser past the boulder. It's very important, especially in solo, to get that damage. So again, I think the highest potential for Insect Glaive is higher if we saw support hunters and a really clean run. But just some interesting things to look at there. Next up then, we have an insane solo run, although there is a Palico at one point from Bow with just shy 17 minutes at 16:59, but for a solo run, there's a major jump forward, kind of ridiculous, and as we'll talk about with the solo list, puts it near the top, so don't underrate this. You can see how clever this run is being immediately by moving over to one of the geysers, baiting the discerning dodge, landing right on the geyser, so it's nicely in position, one of those torch pods goes off, and that's the first geyser popped, while also being really efficient with the normal DPS, and in general, super focusing the wing arms to get that first knockdown. It's just really clever stuff, and this is why I love speedrunning. What's cool about, your ranged weapons, they're also able to smoothly move towards boulder drops, and then without putting the weapon away and losing real DPS time, can shoot it and bring it down on top. Another perfect discerning dodge there to the head. Now we're seeing some smoother movement towards, say, the geyser on the other side, on the southern side of the arena, getting ready for the next pop. And it's really clever with the moveset that we're seeing from Gog. They're not just waiting around on moving just blindly and hoping it'll come over. It's intentionally staying for the DPS medium range when it's a bad move that's not going to have Gog move or reset, so it can actually come to a geyser. And then when it looks good, that's when they sort of roll and move over, being really micro efficient with the movement. The potential of Bow has always been there, but it's great to see it do super well in this context after the title update 4 buff that we've been waiting for. So this is definitely a top tier run to watch if you want to learn Bow against Gog. And what is the true potential of Bow if we saw an incredible run with support hunters? I don't know, but I would think it's going to be near the top with Bow's ability to put out element as well, and the ranged ability behind that. I think it should be a top contender. It definitely has been in terms of solo rankings. On to our next weapon then, we have Hammer, with an impressive time of 16 minutes and 43 seconds, and yet also using support hunters. So we're going to get into a lot of support hunter runs here, but it does open in a pretty interesting way, where instead of tackling Gog directly, getting a counter or powering up or something, the Hammer's able to go straight to the nearby geyser, actually set up a barrel bomb next to it to trigger it, and get the double effect of those together. then very quickly moves over to the second geyser, dragging them through the boulder at the same time and spamming the signal effect to get the support hunters to come over and make it more likely. And this is kind of luck. Sometimes it happens quickly, sometimes Gog just decides to wander around or do ranged attacks, but thankfully there's a bit of luck in this run. It's interesting the different ways you can set off the geysers, by the way, using these proper barrel bombs, the mega ones or whatever, normal ones, but then the small barrel bombs you use to power yourself up with a perfect guard with a shield or a longsword counter. Those can also be used to pop those geysers as a little fact. Anyway, eventually all three geysers and the boulder are popped, and then we get into the real fight, which is interesting in the way that we see the moveset being used. It's a lot of that spinning bludgeon sort of tick damage over and over, not just at the wing arms, though obviously that's a great target, but at the head as well. I'm so used to Hammer being so about, offsets in the current Wilds meta, but also the charge up times, big slams, and maybe some longer combos. But we see a lot of like this grapple pull into an uppercut, the level 2 charge, and then just tons of spinning bludgeon into that upswing, the goal swing, straight back into another spinning. So it's just very effective at getting these instances of tick damage out, which is what's important clearly in this early phase. Something I also want to mention as well in phase 2 is it's possible for some weapons to pop off the ledge here and do an aerial attack, landing back on the ledge, getting great aerial damage and big charge damage as well, because you can charge while you're in the air. And we're seeing a lot of Hammer users do this. I was wondering if we would see speedrunners using this technique with Hammer, and as you can see, we are playing right at the edge, but not doing the jump off repeatedly technique. Either way, it's a strong showing for Hammer, with even more potential for the weapon for faster runs, I think. Next up then we have Sword and Shield with a respectable 16 minutes and 36 second clear time. I still think there's even higher potential for this weapon because, as you can see, very quick combos to punish the wing arms or the weak zones and then move around for whatever's coming. But with Gog specifically being quite slow and heavy-handed with the attacks, it's a perfect one for countering, or perfect guards as we see in this case. And with SNS having such an easy time doing this or that attack, this or that combo, and then pulling out the perfect guard, it's just so reliable. Things were changed a little bit with the patch where they tightened up things with the perfect guard, but it's still very good. As you can see, every single time you see a slash or slam, it's going to be perfect guarded, and then uptime on the wing arms is going to be really easy because SNS can move and attack at the same time, even better than a lot of different weapons. Jumping forward towards phase 3, there is an interesting aspect of SNS that usually pays off, which is the fact that you can have the weapon out and then use, your pods and other utility items at the same time. But because these anti-wyvern shots require a charge up time, it holds you in place. It's interesting to see that SNS doesn't actually benefit in the same way as it usually would with these kind of items. Anyway, we see the same thing that you see at phase 3 most times, which is positioning by the nearby boulder as you get up there on the left side, firing the anti-wyverns, spamming signal to get the actual support hunters to stay near you and that boulder, baiting the drop and getting this first knockdown, then doing great damage to a wing arm to cause another knockdown, and then go to the other wing arm or the head to continue. There's also a great period to target the back tail to get it cut, which is obviously extra materials. We all want that. Target the marking as well, especially for the mutant augments. And we're seeing much of that for SNS here in this clip. So yeah, check out the run if you want to see how to maximize SNS. Our next weapon then is Lance, with a really interesting start. Lance managed a 60 minute and 27 second clear, so very respectable for Lance. That's usually towards the bottom of the pack. This is obviously after Title Update 4 introduced a bunch of buffs to encourage, like say, the triple poke, which we see somewhat here, and also a counter play style, and improving, blocking and guarding with the shield in general. This is an interesting start though, because there are no support hunters. They go over to the wing arm, do some great combos, funnily position themselves a bit awkward here, but get the first geyser, then quickly move over in place of the next geyser and the boulder. This goes really well for them compared to a lot of runners we've looked at where there's a bit of waiting around and a bit of time loss, unfortunately, so hopefully things clear up. But either way, the boulder drop happens, as you can see, and the flinch of the boulder drop causes Gog to move towards him, which is exactly where the second geyser is. So that was really efficient and effective. This player is popping all 3 geysers and the boulder drop and calling the SOS flare now at the third geyser when it's already in position, when Gog is already going to move towards it. So instead of faffing around with trying to use signal and get these support hunters to come and actually play ball, if you just don't bring them, get these environmentals off early, then call them rather than do automatic SOS flare, it's actually very impactful and maybe a really good thing to do in your hunts, whatever weapon you're using. Just something to think about. Either way, great run overall, and some really slick movement with the back steps and turnarounds with the focus mode via lance, and a lot of the charge attack in fact, which is interesting to see. So if you're enjoying lance or you want to see how it's doing in Title Update 4, great run to watch. The next weapon to look at then is Greatsword, with a pretty brutal opening. It's pretty exciting. We do have support hunters, and it is a 60-minute and 18-second clear, so pretty solid of course, but we are using Bale as well. So what we're seeing is some of these like special wave attacks that go through and cleave through the target, hitting very hard, which is fun. But we're seeing after the buffs with, say, true charge slash being encouraged, these longer charge up times, which is great. This is off the back of Omega, by the way, which unfortunately wasn't a very physical fight and was a very hard one to reliably offset and get proper value out of that. So Greatsword did kind of bad in the Omega weapon rankings. So it's nice to see it return to form here with an initial showing that's very strong. And again, I do think there's even more potential for this weapon. But what I think is incredible about this run is the complete lack of geyser early or boulder drop technique or moving around the arena and signal spamming. It's just pure toe-to-toe with the monster, tackling the roars, tackling any attacks, and then going straight into the wing arm with these big charge slams, dealing ridiculous bursts of damage, 700 plus there in a single hit. And of course, we're getting knockdowns because of it. So this is just like classic return to form, man mode Greatsword, and it's what we missed with Omega, so it's fantastic to see, and I do think there's big potential for this weapon with this fight specifically. Moving on then, we have Dual Blades next with a very close time of 16-17 compared to the last one, so very interchangeable. This is a bit of a messy run, admittedly. There are like some mistakes here, and there is some solo run that's like 25 minutes or so, like true solo. So the potential for Dual Blades is still up in the air. Ultimately though, the element output of Dual Blades is incredible, and the free flow nature of this weapon is just perfect for this kind of fight. Slow, big hits, super easy to evade to maintain the demon boost buff. Then stay on the correct target, which is the wing arm, which is an easy reach for a melee weapon that can move around quickly, like SNS, and of course, Dual Blades. So much like we saw with Greatsword, we're seeing repeat knockdowns and actually less of a focus on actually getting the geysers, dropping the boulders as quick as possible. They're not doing that loop that we saw a lot of. I think, say, with the bow run though, we could see some serious finesse with this weapon where you're able to move Gog in a specific path, so you're actually taking advantage of all the geysers early and the boulder drop without any downtime. And I do think you could do something special with that without bringing the SOS hunters at the start like we saw with another weapon, and then calling them in once you've got all the environments going. Because as you can see, with Dual Blades, the multiple knockdowns, getting all this output from the element, it's super good against Gog, especially in Phase 3. One of the easier weapons I've used to take him down or just farm him in general. Next up, we have a familiar name for gunlance, and this incredible 15 minutes and 26 second clear with support hunters. How is that possible? Well, it's with tricks like this, where we're perfect guarding the roar to then get the double cannon blast off, and then quickly positioning at the arm, so that we're going straight into a worm stake combo to get the double worm stake done, which when popped brings down the monster on the first knockdown, leading into more worm stake combo for really efficient and effective gameplay. This is how someone's able to achieve top results with gunlance time and time again, and it's really cool to see this kind of gameplay where we're playing for these perfect guards, landing at the wing arm to get these longer combos off actually successfully. But in this case, it's their ability to efficiently put that incredible output on the right target smoothly. And what's interesting is that this comes from their live stream. They've not actually uploaded a run yet, one that they're happy with, as there are mistakes and things that do go wrong in this run. So I'll be linking to the full live stream, and hopefully they get a run they're satisfied with, because I think the potential for gunlance is somehow even higher than this. But now we get to some weapons that it kind of makes sense that they're near the top, starting with heavy bowgun with a 15 minute and 8 second clear. What is this? Well, it's reliable ranged element into the ideal hit zone. We're seeing them fire these fire shots off into the head over and over. Each shot has a bit of delay between it, the movement's slow, but ultimately combined with corrupted mantle and some perfect guarding, every attack by Gog doesn't really matter, and they're able to just stand in the correct place where the first fire geyser is, and it just kind of naturally goes off without much commitment. But there is some slickness to it, like perfect rolling some of these ranged attacks by Gog, or of course landing the perfect guards on any attack to close the distance straight back to optimal DPS. So unlike some other weapons, it does take a bit of time for that first knockdown because they're not hyper prioritizing the knockdown and getting the wing arms, but some seriously effective pierce damage here, super satisfying to see. So yeah, makes complete sense that the ranged weapons that are able to put out great element damage are doing super well, but the little efficiencies like this, where we're just quickly smoothly dropping the boulder and not losing any DPS time, or the careful positioning as they empty the meter and burst through the arm, well worth watching if you want to learn some heavy bowgun against Gog. So next up, we have a 15-minute and 5-second support hunter run from Chargeblade, where it does not go perfectly. As you can see in the opening, we don't get that perfect guard straight into the power axe mode activate, so it's a bit of an awkward one. Going for the early charge on the arm, then getting the perfect guard, getting the power axe mode going, so it barely slows anyone down, but it's still not like the perfect run. So we have a smooth lava pop kind of naturally as we're fighting, getting charged up and going for the morph loop combo, so that's AED into the follow-up. So we see an SAD here, you get a perfect guard straight into the AED, into an SAD, into the arm specifically, you get a knockdown, then you can get straight into a combo. We actually see ED1, ED2, into AED, into the follow-up, so that's all 4 of the combo actually coming out in a relevant speedrun. Really cool to see that, because there's been all these changes with Title Update 4 for this weapon, where, you know, hit stops lower on the power axe mode, so you're getting into the next attack quicker, and that little almost like attack speed that comes through for that means you can get through the 4-part combo faster, and we managed to get it out on a full knockdown here with Gog. But of course, the juiciest way you can get that out is during the charge up phase when he starts to glow. It's super vulnerable to that dragon element. We see the SAD here, and we got pops of 1,446. I'm able to get pops of 1,600 with my build, and even higher if you commit more to burst and that kind of thing, losing raw. So we'll see how things develop in that way, and maybe with like the more perfect ideal run, we can see even faster time for Chargeblade. But what can I say for this run? It's a massive jump forward for Hunting Horn with a 13-minute and 41-second clear. This is comical stuff. Hunting Horn has been doing really well since I believe it was Title Update 2 and then Title Update 3, more changes. Not a lot happened for Title Update 4, but I don't think they need it. They shot up towards like the top of the runs with Omega and stayed there, and this is of course a familiar runner, QUA, as usual, one of the top runners for the weapon. Interestingly, they start out with one Hunting Horn, getting specific, songs and buffs out, then swapping pretty quick, carefully positioning using the Sacred while they make that swap at the first geyser, and then setting up the Echo Bubbles, getting that trio set up at the head ideally to reverb, and maybe even build into some KO. But you see the hilt stab use being used to ignore attacks, which is super satisfying and fun for the weapon, and then get some hits in near the wing arm. This is a first knockdown, super quick, like ridiculously quick, kind of similar to what we saw with Greatsword earlier, but right now we've also smoothly, subtly transitioned under the boulder. Then after another smooth hilt counter, as it were, a quick boulder drop for more DPS straight into the wing arm. The way that QUA is using the hilt stab though reminds me of something like SNS, where they're in the middle of a combo and then they just pull out that hilt stab on demand, ignoring what the monster's doing completely, and then doing great DPS to get a knockdown back to the head here, getting some KO build up, and obviously setting up the bubbles. There's a lot to look at here if you're a Hunting Horn player, but ultimately be rest assured the Hunting Horn is doing incredible in Title Update 4. It's been put in a great place and it remains there. And finally, we're talking about light bowgun with an insane 13 minutes and 7-second clear with support hunters. This is almost a sub 13-minute run. That's ridiculous. As we've been saying with the bow, with the heavy bowgun, being able to accurately pump DPS effectively, efficiently, without any loss of DPS time compared to the other weapons that have to wait around and position for the boulder drop, the geysers. Your ranged weapons can just keep absolutely smashing the target, hitting the ideal hit zone, getting the knockdowns, all while standing in a place where if the monster finally comes over, you get a massive burst of damage. So we have this ridiculously quick knockdown, already used the first geyser, already used the first boulder, and just pumping DPS with the gauge into the arm during the knockdown, just like the heavy bowgun was doing. And we see them smoothly, just sort of like backstepping towards this geyser. They're now standing on it, they roll right past it. Luckily, a fire attack comes out from Gog, so just Easy activation there. I did see some interesting stuff with light bowgun though, discussions about what they're using and why. And while this runner is definitely using the fire element here, I have seen some just use normal ammo the whole time. But jumping forward to phase 3 where you might expect to see dragon, this is what I'm talking about. I believe this is normal ammo. We're seeing that early bait standing under the boulder, using signal, the usual thing, dropping the boulder, getting the first DPS window, and you see them pump up here and then start to absolutely just dump the gauge using this ammo into the head, getting incredible numbers, but maybe not pumping the dragon like you might expect to see. So where's the dragon output? Well, it's waiting until we start to see this charge up and then super vulnerability, using the gauge to absolutely eviscerate Gog with this dragon damage. But yes, it makes complete sense that light bowgun is a dominant weapon for this fight, and fights in general for Wilds' history so far. But some clever stuff in regards to positioning and ammo usage throughout this run, so go check it out. But now, a quick highlight of what I saw when it came to solo runs and their times compared to one another. For example, one of the best solo runs that I saw for Lance was a 27 minute and 7 second true solo. For Chargeblade, a solo run with Palico, that was 26 minutes and 24 seconds. Greatsword right under that with 26:23. A true solo Jewel Blades run I saw had 25 minutes and 43. Switch Axe then in this context with its solo with Palico with a 25 and 3 seconds run is actually doing much better than it first looked in our initial list. Hammer above that though with a 24:20 using solo and Palico. The Longsword true solo run then at 20 minutes and 55 seconds is even more impressive as it a 4th placement in this list. Insect Glaive with a solo using Palico 1940 even above that. The bow one ridiculous. Solo with a Palico just shy 17 minutes is insane then in this context. And even better, the light bowgun run where they're solo with a Palico, 16 minutes and 52 seconds, the fastest run in both support hunter and solo context. At least currently. So in conclusion, light bowgun has really taken it, and I think that makes complete sense with its ability to just absolutely maintain DPS, the top DPS, one of the highest outputting weapons of the game, and the element potential as well at the times where it's particularly weak to element. It just makes sense. But it is awesome to see something like bow do so well in that solo context. Hunting Horn remains top tier though, as we've seen, but it's also awesome to see things like Chargeblade do so well considering the massive S80 slams that you can do to Gog while he's charging up. But yes, definitely a bit of a strange list this time, given the context of Gog and what's going on, but maybe we'll come back in the future to take another look at the list and see where things truly stand when things are more ironed out. As always, check the description and go check out all these runners, especially if you're wanting to learn any one of these weapons against Gog. For now then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.